If you're curious about the number one belief that ultimately holds entrepreneurs back from success, you're in luck because we're going to get into it right now. Hey, Courtney Sanders here. Welcome back to my podcast. If you are listening to this on iTunes or Spotify, you can hop on over to my YouTube channel if you want to watch this podcast and watch all of my crazy expressions. And I feel like I'm gonna have a few because, I want to talk about something, right? This is going to be one of those good ones, I think. And this is going to be a very simple one. So I actually don't know how long this will be. It'll be either very short because I really only have one thing to say, or it'll be long because, I like to rant and rave on my soapbox. But today we are talking about the number one belief that holds entrepreneurs back. And I wanted to talk about this because there's just a lot of things that have been swirling around in my head. One, most recently, I was invited to speak on the Black Wealth Renaissance podcast, which is super exciting. I'll make sure that I share the link to that podcast in the show notes and here in the description box. It was a long one too. It was like over an hour and a half. Really great conversation about just what it means to build wealth and a lot of the different mindsets that it takes. But out of that conversation really led me to thinking about some things that I'm going to be talking about in this conversation on this podcast in terms of why it seems like people talk a good game of, wanting to be an entrepreneur and wanting to be successful in general, but then they don't always bridge that gap. And I'm realizing that it has less to do with money, right? Like, I don't have enough money to start a business. And it really even has less to do with knowledge. I think everybody thinks, oh man, if I could just, learn all this stuff, and learning is important. Obviously, I basically run a learning and development company. So I'm not saying learning isn't a thing, but there's another key factor that I feel like those who are striving to achieve the success that they're looking for don't realize. And that really is their beliefs. And beyond that, there's a central one belief that I'm starting to notice as a difference between people who really make traction, not just in their business, but in their dreams, and those who don't. And I also thought about this recently, having come back from my retreat in South Africa. This is the second year that I held it. It was really fantastic. And I was really excited that in addition to having clients come out, I got to bring some of my friends, that I know here in Houston who are also very successful entrepreneurs. And it was kind of like a really great masterminding experience. And so out of those conversations too, we were all just talking about the differences and the different things that we notice. So if you're curious about the number one belief that ultimately holds entrepreneurs back from success, you're in luck because we're going to get into it right now. All right. So as I mentioned, this is either going to be really short or really long, depending on how I'm feeling. But simply put, the number one belief that holds entrepreneurs back from the success that they could be achieving is that they believe that they can get 1% results with a 99% mindset. I'll say that again. It's that they believe they can get 1% results with a 99% mindset. And I say this because even for me, as I step into leadership in my company, right? I'm not just a solo entrepreneur, solo coach anymore. And it's not even just that I have a business, something that I do to make money. I now have a company. I have W-2 employees. I, pay payroll tax and, have to be mindful of all these different things as my organization grows. And I'm recognizing like, wow, there's a lot of drama. I don't want to say drama. Drama makes it sound too bad, but there are burdens. I think that's a fair word. There are burdens that you take on as a leader that are not talked about in popular culture, especially when we think about, being the CEO. And I've talked about this. In fact, one of my last CEO series podcasts, I kind of went into depth around that. So you can definitely check that out. But there's weight to be carried, right? There are burdens to be carried. And when people start to ascend in their entrepreneurial journey or in their success journey at all, and they start to hit those burdens, they want to hit the eject button, right? They want to jump out, or they think that something's wrong. Like, is this supposed to be happening to me? Like, this is supposed to be easy and fun. And, I'm supposed to be in Santorini, posting pictures on Instagram, living my laptop lifestyle. I don't understand why I'm dealing with all of these challenges, right? In fact, in that CEO podcast, I talked about how with bigger checks come bigger challenges, right? But you have to become a bigger person, hint, hint. That's part of what we'll talk about today in order to be able to overcome those things. And as I was thinking about that, I realized that ultimately this comes down to a wrong mindset Because people believe that they can think the way they've always thought, that they can think at the level that they're currently operating at. And as long as they know the things to do, then they can do those things and they can achieve extraordinary results. But that's not the case. There's something in between knowing and doing, and that's belief, right? It's your mindset, right? It's how you see yourself, but also how you see the world. And if you see yourself as just another one of the 99%, but also if your beliefs are trained in this 99% thinking, then you're never going to be able to achieve 1% results, because you're thinking like the masses of people who don't have 1% results. You see what I'm saying? Like, and I don't mean to sound harsh, but I'm just saying, logically speaking, you can't say, I want something extraordinary, right? You look at the word, it literally says extraordinary, right? It is outside of the ordinary. People say they want extraordinary results, but they think that they can have beliefs and operate like what is ordinary, yet they're wanting extraordinary results. And I'm like, logically, that doesn't make sense. There's a huge gap there. And so for me, again, when I think about my own journey and the things that I'm even doing now to try to not only achieve, but maintain this level of success in my business, but I look at my friends who are $1 million and multi-million-dollar businesses, and again, the crap that they put up with behind the scenes that the average person doesn't realize, even that their own employees don't realize. And then I'm like, right, these are the same people that are sitting on Instagram and are like, oh, I'm just going to like pay for this course and, slap some stuff together and I'm going to have that level of success. And they miss all the growth and all the depth that they have to develop as a person to even get to the place where they can handle that level of success, let alone create it. And again, it all starts with the beliefs that you have and the ability to shed beliefs, right? You're going to have to stop thinking like what everybody's thinking and be willing to raise your hand and to be a lone wolf and for people to think you're crazy, right? I remember when I quit my good government job 7 years ago, going on 8 years ago. I quit Labor Day 2016. As I'm recording this, it is 2024. People thought I was insane, right? My coworkers thought I was insane. A lot of the people at the time who worked with me were much older than me. They were in their 50s. A lot of them were nearing retirement age. They were so excited to be working for the federal government because they had those good government benefits and that 10% 401k match. And they just thought that here is this young girl who's ruining her life by basically saying, she's going to say goodbye to all of this. Do you know that this is the pinnacle? This is the cream of the crop, right? That's what they used to tell me. Like, do you know the benefits that people are getting out in the private sector and the benefits that we get here? I mean, people like, at my former job just like lived and died by that, right? But I was willing to do something different because I wanted something different. You see, I didn't want what was ordinary. I wanted what was extraordinary. And so I was willing to shift my mindset. I can't have the same mindset of my coworkers who thinks the pinnacle of success and the pinnacle of like financial success and really financial responsibility, which again, we'll talk about in a minute, but who believe the pinnacle of financial responsibility and success is maxing out your 401k. That's an ordinary mindset. I mean, I'm not saying it's a bad mindset. I'm saying it's an ordinary mindset, right? And so I can't maintain that mindset and then say that I want extraordinary results. I'm going to have to do something different. And so again, as I think about the things that I'm doing that are extraordinary, even in basic stuff like getting up very, very early in the morning. But again, the burdens that I'm willing to carry to support my team and to move my organization forward, and a lot of the things that I deal with behind the scenes that are not talked about, are not popularized in this entrepreneurial journey. And I see my friends who are dealing with the same things and again, achieving extraordinary results, but doing things differently. It's almost like I don't want to say a secret club or whatever, but I feel like at certain levels, people are scared to talk about what it really takes because they don't want to burst the popular bubble, right? They don't want to burst the mass mindset bubble of like, it's glamorous, and it can be glamorous at times, right? Like, oh, I get to get dressed up, I do photo shoots, I travel. Like, there are definitely glamorous elements to this, but it's like no one wants to show the unglamorous side. And I feel like that's setting people up for failure because they don't realize what is required in order to get to this level. So in fact, I'm getting ahead of myself. So let me because I do want to make this relatively short. We could be here all day, right? But I do want to get into the core of the differences between a 1% mindset and 1% in whatever your arena is, right? I'm not saying 1% like, oh, I'm a billionaire, because I'm not 1% billionaire. But this will be my third year in a row generating 7 figures in my business. Like, just to be real, in terms of being a woman entrepreneur, let alone a Black woman entrepreneur, not only operating at this level, but operating at this level consistently, now my third year in a row, I'm like, you know what? I am going to start standing on that, right? So by the way, if anybody has issues with that or is like, oh, you think you all that or whatever, that's not what I'm saying. But I am saying that I recognize that I am starting to experience things that are extraordinary. And so my platform has always been about transparency, about taking you guys along on the journey with me, and about hopefully us growing together, right? That's ultimately why I do these podcasts especially, because I feel like this is my opportunity to kind of like sit down and like really tell you the truth, And so if I'm going to be transparent and take you along on that journey, right? I'm still the same girl who was like doing hair care videos in the bathroom at 19. And now I'm like, hey guys, I've hit this level. These are the things that I'm recognizing. I don't know. Maybe on my podcast, I feel like we're going to have to start having some hard conversations and hard truths around, is this what you really want? Like, do you really want to be an entrepreneur? Because there are going to be changes that are demanded of you in order to get to this level. And it's going to be radically different from what is taught in the mainstream and what is popularized. And you're going to have to decide if you're willing to take that leap, because it's going to feel scary doing something that flies in the face of maybe what your family, your friends, and your network want for you. But again, if you want extraordinary results, you're going to have to do extra or non-ordinary things, right? So anyway, when we get into the key differences between a 1% mindset and a 99% mindset, I think it ultimately boils down to how we view risk, how we view responsibility, and how we view the requirements of success, right? Because success is going to require some things of you. And I think, well, again, I'm getting ahead of myself, but there's a certain mindset that I feel like, the broader society has that you're going to have to shed if you want to achieve that 1% success and whatever that arena is in your life. And it doesn't have to be business, even though this podcast is about entrepreneurship, but even if you want to be like a 1% parent, right, who has an extraordinary relationship with your children, or 1% marriages, right? Over 50% of marriages end in divorce. And you not only want to be in the 50% that stays married, but you want to be 1% in terms of the love and the connection that you have with your spouse. Like, again, there are things that you're going to have to do differently, and there are mindsets that you're going to have to shift, right? So let's talk about risk, right? For, I think a 1% mindset and 1% success, especially in the entrepreneurship arena, you are going to have to shift how you look at risk, and particularly how you look at financial risk. And again, I find that people who are really scaling, and I'll just say it, 7 and multi-7 figures, I find that you'll find less of them talking about this because, one, they're busy, right? And I get it. Like, I'm squeezing this podcast in between other things that I have going on. So I understand you don't always have the time to really like break things down. But I want to say, and again, I'm just thinking about my own network and my own friends who are operating at this level. I think there is a level of exasperation, if I could just be real, exasperation with those, again, who say that they want this, who say that they want to have a successful business, and I want to run a 7-figure business, and I want to do these things and whatever. Again, I want to live that laptop lifestyle. I want to see and live the big dream that I see on Instagram. We're saying all of this, but there is such this big risk aversion to making the investments necessary, both on like a time, emotional level, but a financial level too. And for the record, I'm not talking about me or necessarily you investing in my program. Like, shameless plug, yes, I do have a coaching, certification, and marketing program, which I believe is the best on the market. Not only is it accredited and we help you get your certification in 90 days, but we actually will show you how to build a business. We choose the niche for you. We give you all the software that you need in your business for 12 months complimentary. And then after that, it's just $197 a month. Like, the stuff we give you is just kind of insane, right? Is it cheap? No, it is a 5-figure investment, but it's a deal when you consider what you would have ultimately had to invest in order to get all the things that we provide for you. So there, I did my shameless plug. My program aside, right? I'm not necessarily talking about my program, but I'm talking about whatever is required in order for you to get your business off the ground. I marvel at how reluctant people are to just take the leap and do what must be necessary. I remember when I was, again, working my full-time job and I was selling these like low ticket courses, but I knew I needed to figure out how to sell coaching packages if I wanted to make the income necessary in order to replace my job. And I was trying to sell $1,500 packages and I like couldn't sell it, and I kept lowering my price and it wasn't working. And I remember speaking with someone who ultimately became my business coach, who was like, the issue isn't you need to lower your prices, it's actually that you need to raise them. But your issue is that you don't have sales skills. Like, you don't know how to sell, and you don't know how to sell high ticket packages, and you don't know how to sell them as a coach. Like, these are all new skill sets that you need to develop and that you need to invest in, right? So I could have invested in them with her, which I did, or I could have gone to a different training or whatever. I could have gone back to school and went to school for sales or whatever what was required. But an investment needed to be made. And so I remember I took out a credit card and I put that investment on a credit card. It was a four-figure investment. But I remember my mindset at the time, like, yes, it was scary. And yes, there was this unknown where I was like, oh, how do I know that I'm going to be able to pay this back? But I remember telling myself, look, girl, if you can't pay this mid four-figure investment back, you have bigger problems, because you're saying that you want to, at the time, I wanted to run a multi-six-figure business, because that's where my vision was at the time. And I wanted to replace my corporate income and do a little bit better than that. So I'm like, okay, you want to run this multi-six-figure business, but you're worried that you're not going to be able to pay, $5,000 back, $6,000 back. There's a disconnect. Like, if you can't pay that back in your business, the issue is not the investment. The issue is something else going on in your business that you need to figure out. You have bigger problems, right? Because I made more than $6,000 at my corporate job, right? And I was trying to replace my income. So this is what I'm saying, this mindset. So the risk to me at that time was not, putting this investment on the credit card. The risk was not getting what I needed in order to successfully be able to make my business work. And so I was willing to risk. And so again, this 99% versus 1%, this 99% mindset talks about, risk and like, oh my goodness, that's bad. And like, don't put things on a credit card. And I agree, like, don't go on Black Friday and buy TVs and put them on a credit card and all these different things. But there's no discussion around increasing your income. Everything is just about saving and about cutting. But there's no discussion around how to make calculated risk. Because hear me, I'm not saying you should make willy-nilly risk. I'm not even saying you should invest in every program or course or coach or whatever. You do need to do your due diligence. You do need to make sure that it is something that is wise. But understand that whether or not is wise has nothing to do with whether you have to go into debt in order to pay for it. It has nothing to do with the price. It has everything to do with the ROI, right? The return on your investment that you are seeking to get. And I feel like that's a huge mindset that people who say they want to get into this game, who say they want to get into entrepreneurship, will not let go, because it feels comfortable from from an employee mindset, right? Because when you're an employee, you only have one stream of income. And so you do have to be very like, okay, I only have one stream of income coming in, and I got like 10 different streams of income going out, right? I got my mortgage or my rent, I got my car note, I have clothing I need to pay for, food, et cetera, et cetera. So it is this mindset to focus on scarcity and to be like, oh my goodness, how am I going to be able to afford these things? But this is what I'm saying. You can't get to the next level operating from the mindset of where you currently are. This is the scariest leap that like no one makes. And this is why I say I think people who have made it almost feel exasperated, because it's like they're trying to tell you what it takes and what is required. And people are still like, but no, XYZ financial guru says this. I need to like keep doing this. I stopped, just being real, I stopped the 10% 401k match for a year while I was working on my business. Like, I started to divert that money towards my business. My coworkers would have thought I was insane. You're young. Like, don't you know that when you turn 65, that money is going to come? Yes. I know these things, but I don't want ordinary results. That's if I'm still trying to play on this level. I'm not trying to stay here. I'm not trying to stay here on this level. I want to go to the next level. And so I am willing to forego what is a good thing and a good idea for great, because I want what is exceptional. I don't want what is just good. I want what is exceptional. And so I have to do things differently. And so I think when you get to this level and you think about all the sacrifices that you've personally had to make and that you continue to have to make, and then you have people who will not even do a fraction of what you did to get to where you went through, whether it was, again, getting up early in the morning. To this day, I'm still getting up at 3 a.m., right? But at the time, I was getting up at 3 a.m. Because I had my full-time job. So I'd do some work in the morning, and then I'd do work on the lunch break. And then by the evening, I was beat. Now I'm getting up early because I got small children. And even though they're in school and all of that, just by the time they get home, I want to be present with them. And so for me to get the hours in that I need in my business, it's just easier if I wake up before school, before they get started. Like, there are things that I'm doing and that I'm willing to do. And then people say, well, I want what you have. And then when I tell them what's required, then they're like, well, no, I don't want to do that. And well, I was told that I should. And it's like, yeah, you were told that for if you're going to maintain the lifestyle that you're currently at. But what about if you want something more, right? And I also find it funny, and I said this on the podcast that I was invited to, the Black Wealth Renaissance. I find it fascinating that people find it so risky and so almost like financially irresponsible to, again, invest capital or to borrow money or to do whatever is necessary in order to grow their business. Yet they use tools every single day that some other entrepreneur either invested their own money or had to be responsible for gathering other investors' money in order to make that possible, right? If you're listening to me, then that means you're either listening to this via Wi-Fi or you're listening to this via a cellular network. Do you know how much those cellular towers cost, right? Do you know how much it costs to dig into the ground, have work crews, lay fiber optic cables for miles, even underwater, from the US going to, the UK and into Europe? And like, do you know the extraordinary expense that is required for the infrastructure that you and I take for granted every single day? And most of this infrastructure is private, right? It's private property. Yes, we have roads and different things like this, but again, these cell phone companies, these Wi-Fi companies, if you're watching this on YouTube, Google itself, right? If you're listening to this on Spotify and iTunes, do you understand how many billions of dollars went into the infrastructure for everything that we take for granted every single day, right? Somebody had to pony up, right? Whether it was the initial entrepreneur who were taking home lines off their house or maxing out credit cards or emptying their savings or whatever to get it started, and then putting their name and their credit and their reputation on the line for investors and banks to, invest more money for them to get that going. Again, it's like, if you want 1% results, risk is a part of the requirement. Risk is a part of the requirement, which goes to, I feel like I'm skipping, right? I said 1% think differently about risk. They think differently about responsibility, and they think differently about what is required. And I feel like responsibility and what is required really go hand in hand. So one, in terms of responsibility, part of why they are willing to take that risk, and this is a mindset shift that is definitely not seen, in society in general, is that they have a level of personal responsibility, or what I like to call radical responsibility, that no matter what is happening externally, they believe that they have enough personal agency and self-control that they can still make things happen and that they are still ultimately in charge of their destiny. That is a radical belief. Most people don't believe that. I mean, truly. Most people believe that they have some level of influence on their destiny as long as everything goes right? As long as they don't lose their job and the economy isn't terrible and this doesn't happen and that doesn't happen, then yeah, sure, I can take steps and I can achieve these things. But I find that people who, again, achieve an extraordinary level of success, this is a podcast topic around business and entrepreneurship, but I mean this even for those 1% parents or those 1% spouses, in the 1% marriage, or people who have 1% health. It is a belief that no matter what is going on externally, I can't control what happens externally, but I can control myself. And the level of control that I have of myself is so strong and is so powerful and is so sufficient that I can still really enforce my will to achieve the dreams and the desires that I have in whatever area of my life, right? It doesn't matter. And so that has been a belief that I've had from the very beginning. I thank my parents for that. But I find that people, again, say, oh, okay, I'm willing to take this risk in my business, going back to the other, I'm willing to make this investment, I'm willing to go out on a limb, I'm willing to whatever. But the second things start to look crazy, I don't know if the economy is going to be going well, or, at work, they're giving me more responsibilities and I'm having to work more hours. I don't know if I'm going to have enough time, to invest in this business. Or heaven forbid, someone gets sick or whatever. Like, all these external situations that we cannot control that come up, right? I'm not saying that they of themselves are not significant. I'm just saying that they don't have the last say, right? You ultimately have the last say. Truly, God has the last say. But I believe as his agents here on earth, and don't get me started on that, I feel like we think less of what our power really is. I mean, not to get on scripture, but I'm reminded of a Bible verse that says, for here and now on this earth, we're just a little lower than angels, right? I think about that all the time. And I'm like, are we saying that just in a spiritual sense? No, like the power that man has in terms of his or her imagination and the things that we can create is extraordinarily powerful. And people, like, it pains me to no end how people live day in and day out as if they are just powerless souls who have no control over their destiny. And so all of these really go hand in hand, but I find that those who are willing to achieve or able to achieve 1% success, again, I'm talking in an entrepreneurial sense, but whatever, marriage, health, relationships, parenting, whatever, it's because they're willing to take the risk because they have that radical responsibility, and they have that radical responsibility because they understand their own power, right? And they understand that regardless of what is happening around them, they still have power in and of themselves. And because they are powerful, right? They're just a little lower than an angel for while they are walking here on earth, they can enforce change even as things seem to be falling all the way around them. And so that leads me to the last part of this 1% versus 99% mindset, which is a real understanding of what is required. And so I think this has gotten worse with the advent of social media because, everyone is looking at the end result and they want it now. And again, there's no discussion. It's super glossy. Everything is glossed over in terms of what is actually required. I think those who have 1% success in business and in life and every other arena are very self-aware and are willing, if they don't know, are willing to find out what is required and are willing to do what is required. And what I'm seeing is there are a lot of people, again, who talk a good game, who say they want all these things. I want to have a 7-figure business. I want to do all this. I want to grow my brand. I want to be super successful. I want to quit my job. Or I want to have a 1% marriage. I want to be a 1% parent. I want to be in the best shape of my life. I want to be in my 60s, climbing up Kilimanjaro, like whatever. They say they want all of this, but then when it comes down to the requirements, oh, well, while you're working your full-time job for the next year, you're going to have to get up at 5, heaven forbid, 4, even 3 o'clock in the morning in order to put in the work. And you're going to have to work on your lunch break because you're putting so many hours in at work and you want to leave that evening time open for your family and your kids. Oh, you're going to have to cut sugar out of your diet and you're going to have to cut out processed food and you're going to have to start cooking at home. Or, oh, you're going to have to forgive your spouse for past mistakes and you're going to have to learn how to communicate better and you're going to have to stop seeing everything through a negative lens and start to see each other, as one flesh and that you guys are a team. Or, oh, you're going to have to stop making your child, a mini you and living your dreams vicariously through your child. And you're going to have to start accepting your child for who they are and start supporting them so that they can be the best person that they were created to be, right? When we find out what is really required, people are like, I'm not willing to do that, right? In fact, I would even say the 99% mindset is not only are they not willing to do what is required, they try to bend the requirements to fit their feelings, right? Well, I don't think that I should, have to invest or do anything in my business or whatever. So I'm going to call everything a scam and I'm going to, talk about how this is financially irresponsible and I'm going to, make this big thing about this. Or, I don't think that I should have to be a good communicator in my marriage and that I should have to compromise sometimes. And so, I'm going to make everything about how it's the other person's fault, right? I don't think that I should, have to be healthy and do all this stuff. So I'm going to focus on, how I can do crash dieting or how I can do crazy workouts so that I don't have to live a balanced lifestyle. Like literally, and you see this on social media, which is why I'm like, I think social media has made this worse. People get on their soapbox for the wrong reasons and they're trying to tear down what are really not just the requirements, but like tried and true principles that make things work. It's almost like the laws of the universe, right? Like, every reaction has an opposite and equal reaction. That is a law of the universe. You cannot make that not a thing, right? So regardless of how you feel about that, that's the way it's always going to be. But then people, get in their feelings. They don't want to do things. And it's like they're out here rallying, trying to make the requirements not the requirements, where people who have a 1% mindset don't think that way. Not only do they not think that way, they accept what is required for whatever it is that they say they want, because they said they want it, right? And they truly do. And so if you want it, you must be willing to do what is required, right? That's a part of taking radical responsibility. And yes, it is a risk, but those three things combine and what is ultimately going to help you get the success. And so again, the conversations that I have with my friends who are very successful in business, on the conversation that I had on the Black Wealth podcast, and just what I'm noticing, if you really want this, you've heard me say on this podcast, if you're really about this life, right? You can't be average and amazing at the same time. And you can't expect 1% results with a 99% mindset. So that's the number one belief that holds entrepreneurs back from the success that they could have. That's the number one belief that holds anybody back from the success that they could have in every arena. You know, hard truth podcast, but I felt like somebody had to say it, so I said it. So hopefully you enjoyed this podcast, even if I stepped on your toes a few times. If you're interested in becoming a 1% coach, thought leader in this industry, definitely check out my coaching certification and marketing program. The links are wherever the links are, depending on where you're watching this from. Make sure you subscribe to me on YouTube, iTunes, Spotify. Make sure you are following me on both Instagram and LinkedIn. You can send me some email on LinkedIn or send me a DM on Instagram. And with that, I'll see you in the next one. Bye.